You know, when you think about the space race, your mind probably jumps straight to one place, right? The moon. But while the entire world was glued to their TVs watching America's Apollo missions, the Soviet Union was gambling on something way, way more dangerous. They were running a series of secret, high-stakes missions to our neighboring planet, a planet that, well, was gonna fight back. Hard. I mean, for America, the goal was crystal clear and super public. President Kennedy stood up and promised to land a man on the moon before the decade was out. It was this incredible challenge that just captured the world's imagination. It was a race for the ultimate prize. So, with all eyes on America and the moon, the Soviets? They spotted an opening. They figured, hey, if we can't be first to the moon, we'll be first to somewhere else, somewhere much more mysterious. Their target wasn't just another rock in space. It was a place they thought could be an even bigger win. Yep, you heard that right. Venus. The Soviets basically decided that if America was going to go to the moon, then Russia would go to hell itself. They started planning a whole series of missions that were so dangerous, so out there, they were pretty much one-way trips into a complete and total unknown. Okay, so let's get into it. Why Venus? I mean, why pour billions of rubles and decades of work into exploring a planet that was a total black box? Well, for the Soviets, that mystery, that was the whole point. Back then, Venus was this giant cosmic secret box. You could look at the moon through a telescope and see craters, right? But Venus was just covered. The thinking in the Soviet Union was that if they could be the ones to reveal what was under those clouds, whether it was oceans, jungles, or who knows, maybe even life, that would be a scientific victory even bigger than landing on the dusty old moon. And you can see why they were so obsessed. I mean, on paper, Earth and Venus look like twins. They're neighbors, they're about the same size, similar distance from the sun, but Venus had that one massive difference. You couldn't see a thing. That single detail fueled all this wild speculation and turned the planet into the ultimate prize. So the Soviets launched their campaign. But they were about to find out something absolutely terrifying. Venus wasn't just some passive destination. Oh no, it was a hostile world that seemed to be actively trying to destroy every single thing they sent its way. And the early years, oh man, they were just a string of brutal disasters. The very first attempt didn't even make it out of Earth's orbit. Then Venera 1, the first probe ever sent to another planet, just went radio silent a week in. Venera 2, same story. And yeah, Venera 3 technically did reach Venus, but it was just a dead chunk of metal that smashed into the planet with no data sent back. They called these the ghost missions because they were these expensive, public failures the Soviets just tried to sweep under the rug. Finally, in 1967, Venera 4 gave them their first real clue. As this probe was descending through the clouds, it was actually sending back data. And then it just stopped, dead. When they analyzed what happened, they realized the shocking truth. The atmospheric pressure was so insanely high, so far beyond anything they'd planned for, that the probe had been completely and utterly crushed, flattened like an empty soda can. And that one piece of information, it changed everything. The Soviets realized they weren't sending some delicate scientific tool to a sister planet. No. They were sending a scout into a war zone. Their entire strategy had to be rebuilt from the ground up. So what did they do? They threw out the old playbook entirely. The early probes were kind of lightweight, packed with all sorts of different sensors. But the Venera 7 lander? That thing was a beast. It was built like an actual tank, just massively over-engineered, with one single objective: survive. Science was nice, but just staying alive long enough to send a peep back to Earth? That was the whole mission. And incredibly, on December 15th, 1970, it actually worked. Against all odds, Venera 7 made it. Now, the landing was ugly. The parachute tore, it slammed into the ground, and it tumbled onto its side. But even broken like that, it did what nothing had ever done before. For 23 precious minutes, it sent a tiny, weak signal all the way from the surface of another world. So what did it find? Well, the data that came back was just horrifying. First thing it confirmed was the temperature. 465 degrees Celsius. That's over 850 Fahrenheit. To put that in perspective for you, that is literally twice as hot as your kitchen oven on its highest setting. And then there was the pressure. The probe confirmed the surface pressure is 90 times what we feel here on Earth. That's the same crushing force you'd feel if you were 1 kilometer, that's over half a mile, deep in the ocean. Just unimaginable. And if that wasn't enough, there's the wind. During the descent, the scientists noticed the probe was getting shoved sideways, and when they calculated why, they discovered that the upper atmosphere has these constant, planet-wide winds blowing at 360 kilometers per hour. That is faster than a Category 5 hurricane. Okay, so the Soviets had done it. They had built a machine that could literally survive hell. You think the hard part was over, right? Well, now came the next big challenge. Just trying to get a picture. And this is where the story gets both amazing and just unbelievably frustrating. And the frustration just kept building. Venera 9 and 10 were okay, partial successes. They each survived for about an hour and each sent back one picture because only one of their 2 cameras worked. Then came Venera 11 and 12. These things survived for an incredible 110 minutes each and sent back nothing. 0 images. The landers were fine, but the cameras were totally dead in the water. So what on earth was going on? They'd spent millions, they'd built these incredible survival machines, and yet at the very last second, they were getting stopped. Again and again and again. The answer? It's almost funny, it's so frustrating. It all came down to a single tiny piece of hardware. On 4 different missions, on 4 different landers, the little lens caps that were supposed to protect the cameras during the fiery descent, they just wouldn't pop off after landing. A failure so simple, it's infuriating. But they finally cracked it. Venera 13 and 14 were the absolute peak of the program. They took the first breathtaking color photos. They had microphones that recorded the actual sound of wind and maybe even thunder on another planet. They found signs of seismic activity, what you might call Venus quakes. And in this perfect moment of cosmic irony, the soil tester on Venera 14 landed right on top of its own ejected lens cap and dutifully measured how hard it was instead of the planet. So when you put it all together, these missions, failures, frustrations, and all, they fundamentally changed how we see our solar system. That secret box was finally open. The Venera program just demolished all the old ideas about Venus. It turned it from this potential paradise into a confirmed hellscape. We got the exact temperature and pressure. We learned the atmosphere was choking carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. We clocked those insane winds. We saw the sharp volcanic rocks on the ground. And finally, with radar on later orbiters, they mapped the entire hidden surface of the planet for the very first time. Their effort was so overwhelming, so relentless, that for a whole generation of scientists and space buffs, Venus wasn't just another planet in the sky. It was theirs. They had conquered it through sheer stubbornness and brilliant engineering. And that brings us to the big, lingering mystery. After 18 missions, after doing everything they set out to do, after making Venus their own, Russia has never gone back. This incredible chapter of exploration just stopped. It leaves you wondering why. Well, that's a story for another time.